So today I'm here to talk about all the books that I read during the month of September. I am super late with this video, I know, but I just really was trying to finish The Way of Kings and then I didn't finish it until the 10th, so now I'm just like, what am I doing? But I'm going to talk about that today because I just really want to talk about it and I don't want to wait any longer to talk about it. I read 5 books that I'll be reviewing today if you count Way of Kings, so let's just get right on into the books. So starting out, I listened to an audiobook and I read The Stranger Beside Me by Ann Rule. This is like one of the most best-selling true crime novels of all time. I've kind of been like making my way through the bestsellers. This is a really interesting book because Ann Rule is a true crime author. She has been for a long time, but she actually worked with Ted Bundy at a 911 dispatch center while she was also doing true crime writing on the side. She was like writing articles and whatnot, but she worked with him for a long time and got to be pretty good friends with him and had a personal relationship with him as well before he was caught for murdering all these women. So this has a very interesting take on it because it has that first-hand perspective. I am pretty familiar with the Ted Bundy cases. I've watched lots of documentaries about them. I've listened to lots of podcasts about him and the crimes that he committed. So I was pretty familiar with this, and I don't really think that this like informed me of anything I didn't already know, but it was pretty interesting hearing about Ann Rule's experience with him as a friend and like how he was acting towards her throughout the case, and he was reaching out to her a lot and stuff, and I thought that was pretty interesting. But overall, I think if you are pretty familiar with true crime, you're probably pretty familiar with Ted Bundy, then I don't really know if I'd recommend this one other than if you're just looking for like a different take on it. Then I reread Iron Gold by Pierce Brown. This was my first time rereading this one and I absolutely loved this one. So I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, the same rating that I gave it the first time that I read it. This series is just so amazing in how every single book, I feel like it gets better quality. So this one isn't my favorite installment of the series. I think my favorite is still Morningstar. Actually, my favorite 100% is still Morningstar, but this book I even feel like is a little bit better quality than Morningstar. I don't know how his writing improves with each book, but even through my first read of the series, I thought that. Even now through my reread of the series, each book is better quality than the last one, so it really makes me so excited to read Dark Age, which I will be reading in the next couple months. I have it on my end of the year TBR, which I'll link up there, all the books that I want to read in October, November, and December, so I'm hopefully gonna get to it this month in October. We'll see how that goes with my wrap up at the end of the month. There's some new characters' perspectives added into this one, and they're not like a new favorite character for me, but I do think that they were necessary to expand the world in the way that Pierce Brown was really wanting to, and they definitely added to the story rather than subtract for it. They're very well developed, very well written, as all of his characters have been, but they just weren't like my personal favorite. If you were on the fence whether or not you wanted to continue on with this sequel series, the sequel trilogy, definitely do so. I know people are a little bit iffy about like adding on to a series after it's completed, but this one does it so good. It's like probably the best example that I have, so highly would recommend picking up this one if you haven't yet. I also continued on with the Wayward Children series with Beneath the Stricter Sky by Sean McGuire. I gave this one a 3.5 out of 5 stars, so it wasn't my favorite one. I was in love with Down Among the Sticks and Bones. That book was incredible. I was just obsessed with it, and I had pretty high expectations going on for the rest of the series, but this one just was not like for me, my personal preferences. This one is following a very nonsensical Candyland vibe, which I just didn't really enjoy reading about. I really like the more darker, logic-based worlds that they have in the series. Those ones are more of my favorite. We did get a little sneak peek of one in this one, and I'm like, man, I wish that this book was set in that world, but it wasn't, so I didn't love this one very much. I'm still very excited to continue on with the series, and I actually would recommend this book because I think other people would like it, but the Alice in Wonderland-y like nonsense stuff just doesn't click with me. I don't really like it. I'm just the kind of reader where I like everything to make sense, and with a obviously nonsense fairyland, like that's not gonna happen, so it just like wasn't really for me. I also didn't love the new characters that were introduced. There was, I think, 2 or 3 new ones that we got, and I didn't really enjoy any of them as much as I enjoyed the characters that we got in the first 2 books. But I will be continuing on with the series because overall the series is incredible so far. Now we are to my final 2 that I have the most to say out of all the books that I read in September. The first one being Sword of Cayenne by M.L. Wang. I read this book with Holly from Holly Hearts Books. I'll have her channel linked up there. She's linked in almost every one of my videos, but we buddy read this one and we had been hearing such amazing things about it. I mean, like the SFF booktube community has been going insane over Sword of Kaigen, which I totally understand the hype for this. I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5 star for various reasons. But first, I'll tell you guys what this book is about. If you haven't noticed, I don't really summarize things for books that are in the middle of a series, but the first one in a series or a standalone, I always give a summary for. I don't know why I do that. But anyway, Sword of Kaigen. So this is following a mother and a son, 2 different character perspectives. And it is in a fantastical Japanese setting. They live in a small village whose main task is to keep up like the old ways of the samurai, basically is what it comes down to, and their job as a whole village overall is to protect like the rest of the country. Now the rest of the world has advanced normally to like a modern world where they have video games and whatnot, which was kind of confusing to me and a little bit jarring when those first mentioned. I'm like, video games? What are you talking about? But it's not really part of this story. It's just mentioned that the other parts of the world have these modern things. Personal preference, I didn't really like that because I don't like urban fantasy or anything that's like that type of modernness. I don't enjoy that in my fantasies. But like I said, the village itself is very like old school, so they don't have anything like that. There is a magic system that is very similar to Avatar: The Last Airbender, so the different like countries in their world have different elemental powers. Their particular village is part of like the water tribe, you would call it. Right away, I was very intrigued by the mother's character. She's a very demure and submissive wife on the outside, but you can tell that she kind of has a little bit more to her character going on, and I really enjoyed her perspective. It was probably my favorite of the 2 between her and her son. And there was a lot of character work done throughout this book with everyone that was involved. They live in a family compound. They're basically the most important and powerful family in their village. They have the most powerful warriors. The setting of this was really cool, and I really love Avatar: The Last Airbender, and I think that if you really enjoyed it, you'd probably enjoy this book also. This book has the single most suspenseful and intense battle scene I have ever read. My heart was racing when I was reading it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what's happening? I had to take a break for a second because it was just so much going on. The middle probably 300 pages nonstop. I could not put it down. I was just like wanting to read it every second. I could not believe what was happening. Jaw to the floor. Incredible middle section of this book. Now, the ending. Severe letdown. I don't know how else to say it. If the middle portion was like 10 out of 10, 5 stars, amazing. The end was like a 1.5 or a 2 star, which made it hard for me to rate this book. I think the last 150 pages or 100 pages or so were just so weak. It's almost like the whole book was forgotten. She had this epic wave of stuff happening, and then it's like, crap, now how do I wrap this up? I have no idea what to do at the end, was what it felt like to me. There was so much character work done throughout the story that at the end it was just completely abandoned, and it was like, why did we spend so much time learning about this character when at the end it culminates to absolutely nothing? I also forgot to mention that this book contains quite a bit of trigger warnings, so I would really do some research on that. This is like a more intense version of the Poppy War, I would say. So if you were at any time concerned about reading the Poppy War, I would not recommend this book for you, because to me this one was even more intense than that. So I was a little bit salty about the ending. The more I think about it, the more salty I get. But that middle portion was so good. I feel weird rating this book anything less than a 4 star because I just loved that middle portion and it was so good. If I had to read the end, at least I got to read that, and that part was so good. So I gave this book a 4 star overall, but man, that ending, what do you do about it? But it was just not it. Okay, well now we're to the big daddy of the books, The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. This book is incredible. Oh my gosh. Okay. I don't even have any words to describe this book other than masterpiece. Gosh. Brandon Sanderson, like, I really enjoyed the 2 other books by him that I read, and I'm so looking forward to reading more, but they're not anywhere close to this. This book is just so good. Okay. I'm going to try to summarize this book for you, but it's 1,000 pages long, so keep that in mind when I give you this summary, because how do you summarize 1,000 pages into 30-second pitch? This book is an adult high epic fantasy story following in this world where there's these crazy storms. So crazy lightning, rain, wind. Like, you will die if you were not undercover when one of these storms hit. The world itself is huge. There's tons of countries, to the point where some people from one country like don't even know other countries exist. And these high storms affect the world as a whole. Now, we're following a bunch of characters, but I would say 3 main character perspectives. We're following Kaladin, who I would consider to be the main character of this book. Most of the book is focused around his story, and he was a warrior in the army, but through a series of events, he has now become a slave, and so it's following his journey as a slave. We're following Shallan, who is a girl whose father just died, and in order to save her estate, she is traveling to a distant country trying to find this scholar to basically like apprentice under. Then we're following Dalinar and Aladin, who are father and son. I would say that their perspectives are pretty interchangeable because they're following the same storyline. Dalinar is the high prince, and we're like the general of one of the armies to the king, and Aladin is his son, who's going to be his successor. Okay, that is my brief summary, as much as I could do for you. I'm going to be doing a whole spoiler review on this book, I think, because I just have so much I want to talk about with it. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to be doing a spoilery book chat, so stay tuned for that. This has some of the best character work I have ever seen in a book. The character of Kaladin, I can't with him. He is so heartbreaking. He's dealing with so many conflicting emotions: survivor's guilt, depression, anxiety, feeling not good enough, all these things. He's a very honorable man, but he is like put into these terrible situations, and he has to like be forced to make a choice. And he is just one of the most interesting, compelling characters I've ever read. Shallan, I love her too. She is so genuine and just heartfelt, wanting to learn, but she is also pulled between 2 places. She's being pulled between her family back home and wanting more for her life. Dalinar and Aladin, also incredible. I just love all the characters in this book. They're all distinct from each other, but they all are so real and raw feeling. It's just a very human character development of each of the characters in this book. There's also several more characters that we're following, but they will just get like a chapter here and there, kind of to add a little bit more perspective to the world. All of them I loved too. He also does an incredible job with developing each of the country's cultures and how like people from a different country interact with other ones because of things that are deemed polite or impolite. It's just very interesting. The writing of this book is simple in nature. It doesn't feel overly extravagant, something like The Name of the Wind would. So if you have been intimidated to pick up this book because of its length, I know it's very long. It's 1,000 pages. It took me exactly a month to get through from the time I opened the first page to the time I closed the last one. So I understand it's a long book. However, the writing is very accessible and easy to understand. There was never any points where I felt confused. I definitely think that this is an accessible book, even though it's so long. If you have been feeling like you really want to read it but are just a little bit scared of its length, don't be scared of its contents. It's not hard to read, and I am so excited that there's going to be so many books in the series. So from my understanding, there's going to be one 5-book arc and then a second 5-book arc that is like set in the same world but individual. So the 4th book of the first series of 5 books is getting released in November, and I just am really excited to catch up with the series. I'm hoping to be able to be caught up by the time the 5th book comes out of that. I'll be reading Words of Radiance by the end of the year, and I just can't wait to get back into this world. It is so good. Definitely highly recommend. 5 out of 5 stars. I don't know if I said that or not, but I'm sure you could tell by my glowing review. It's incredible. Okay, so that was my wrap up where I spent 50% of the time talking about The Way of Kings. Am I mad about it? No. And I still have more to say. So I'm really excited to talk to you guys more in depth about that in my upcoming video. I'll be filming that hopefully this week, so maybe by the end of the month it'll go up. So definitely stay tuned for that. But thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to like it down below and subscribe if you'd like to see more content from me. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.